The bell above the door gave its usual tired jingle as I stepped into the cafe. Same hour, same corner seat by the window, the one where I could watch people go by without anyone noticing me watching. I came here enough that the barista stopped asking for my order weeks ago. But today, it wasn't her I noticed first. She was at the counter, digging through her bag for something, brow slightly furrowed. Not the kind of furrow that made you nervous, the kind that made you want to help, even if you had no reason to. Mid-40s, maybe? Crisp white blouse, sleeves rolled up like she'd rather be anywhere else but still couldn't help being put together. The barista glanced over. Usual? I nodded. Yeah. Thanks. While I waited, I caught myself glancing at her hands, a quick, automatic thing, just as she finally found her wallet. She smiled, mostly to herself, like she was laughing at being late to her own morning. I looked away too quickly, studying the chalkboard menu as if I hadn't memorized every item on it. By the time I sat down, she'd taken the table diagonally across from mine. Not close enough for conversation, but close enough to notice she drank her coffee slowly, the way people do when they're not really in a rush to be anywhere. I pulled out my phone, stared at an unsent message to someone who hadn't texted me in weeks. Thought about adding a period, deleting a word, rewriting it again. Instead, I just locked the screen and took a sip of coffee that had already cooled too much. When she stood to leave, I thought that was it, another stranger passing through the frame. But as she walked by, she paused. "You're in here a lot," she said, a little amused, like she'd been holding it in for days. I gave a small laugh. "Guess I'm predictable. You order the same thing every time." "And you don't?" I asked before I could stop myself. She raised an eyebrow, like she wasn't sure whether to answer or just keep walking. "Then, maybe I do. But I like to think I'm harder to read." It was such a small thing, just a passing comment, but it landed heavier than it should have. Something about the way she held eye contact a fraction longer than normal, like she was testing to see if I'd hold it too. I folded the napkin on my table, just to have something to do with my hands. "Well, I'll try to keep things interesting," I said, quieter than I meant to. Her smile barely showed, but it stayed even as she turned for the door. "No goodbye. Just that knowing look people give when they've decided something you don't know yet." The bell jingled again and she was gone, leaving only her empty mug on the counter and the faintest trace of perfume in the air, something warm, not sharp. I told myself it was nothing. Just a random conversation with someone twice my age who happened to notice me sitting in the same spot too many mornings in a row. But 5 minutes later, when I picked up my phone to scroll aimlessly, there was a new notification. "Unknown number, next time, try the caramel latte. Trust me." I stared at it longer than I should have, thumb hovering over the keyboard, heart doing that uneven thing it hadn't done in months. Somewhere in that quiet corner cafe, without warning, my routine had cracked. The next morning I ordered the caramel latte without thinking. When the barista slid it across the counter, she gave me a look like she knew something I didn't. I tried not to check the door every 30 seconds. She came in later than usual, sunglasses pushed up in her hair, holding a canvas tote stuffed with folders. When she spotted me, there was the faintest smirk, the kind you give someone when an inside joke already exists. "Well," she asked, nodding at my cup. "Too sweet," I said. "But I'm pretending to like it." She laughed under her breath, low and short. Not polite laughter, real. She set her folders down at the table next to mine. "I have to read through these," she said, "but I hate sitting alone." "Mind?" I shook my head, though my pulse had already picked up. For a while, it was just the sound of her papers shifting and my spoon clinking against ceramic. I stole glances, the way she tucked her hair back when it slipped, how she kept adjusting her sleeve like it wouldn't sit right. I caught myself wondering what her life looked like beyond this cafe. She broke the silence first. "My son's about your age," she said casually, eyes on the page. "He'd roll his eyes if he saw me drinking this much coffee." I nodded, trying to keep my face neutral. "College?" "Just started. He's figuring things out." She hesitated, pen tapping against her notebook. "We both are." Something about the way she said it made me want to ask more, but I didn't. I didn't want to make it real. When her pen rolled off the table, I caught it before it hit the floor. She smiled, small but warm, and for a second our hands were too close. I felt stupid for noticing, but I noticed. We talked around the edges of our lives, favorite books, the best late-night diners in town, nothing heavy, but enough to feel the air change. Every time our eyes met, it lingered a beat longer than it should. At one point she reached for her tea, and I caught myself imagining what it would be like if she reached for me instead. The thought came quick and sharp, followed by the guilt of even thinking it. She must have felt something too, because her hand froze halfway to the cup before she finished the motion like nothing happened. When she finally packed up her things, she said, "Thanks for the company." Simple words, but they landed like they meant more. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but she was already adjusting the strap of her tote. Just before she left, she reached over and straightened the folded napkin I'd been messing with. "Next time," she said softly, almost like a warning, "don't sit so far away." Her fingers brushed mine. Just barely. Enough to feel like an accident. Enough to know it wasn't. It became routine without meaning to. Not every day, just enough to notice when she wasn't there. Same cafe. Same table now. This morning she looked tired, like she hadn't slept much. Hair pulled back loosely, cardigan hanging off one shoulder. "You're here early," she said, sliding into the chair opposite mine. "You're here late." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. We talked around nothing, weather, parking, some article she'd read. But there was a pause I couldn't shake. Like she was holding something back. Halfway through my coffee, she spotted someone across the room, a woman her age, waving. I recognized her from around the neighborhood. She hesitated, then gave the smallest nod back. "You know her?" I asked. "Sort of," she said quickly, too quickly. "She talks." I didn't push. But I felt the space between us shift. Like someone had cracked the door open on something neither of us wanted to name. After the friend left, she went quiet. Stirred her tea without drinking it. The spoon kept hitting the cup. "You okay?" "Yeah. Just, long night." She glanced at me then looked away just as fast. "You shouldn't waste mornings sitting here with someone old enough to don't." It came out sharper than I meant. "Don't do that." She froze, then gave a small, uncertain laugh. "Okay." But her hands didn't stop fidgeting. I reached for the pen she'd dropped earlier in the week, still in my jacket pocket because I'd meant to give it back. "You left this." She took it carefully, fingertips grazing mine. Just that, a fraction of a second, but it stayed. A couple came in laughing too loudly, and we both instinctively leaned closer so we could hear each other over the noise. Close enough I could see the faint line of her perfume on her neck. Close enough my words caught in my throat. "You ever think," I started, then stopped. "Never mind." "What?" she asked, voice low. "That some people just get it? Without saying anything?" Her eyes held mine a beat too long. Then she looked down, twisting the pen. "That's dangerous." We sat in silence, both pretending to sip drinks we weren't touching. I caught my reflection in the window behind her, too young, too obvious, and wondered what she saw in hers. When she finally stood to leave, I walked her to the door without meaning to. Outside, it had started raining. Light, cold drops. She opened her umbrella, then paused. "You're getting wet," she said softly, stepping closer, close enough that I could feel her breath in the chill air. For a second it was just us, rain, the faint city hum, her hand almost brushing my sleeve like she might fix something, like she might. And then she pulled back. Just an inch. Just enough. "See you," she whispered, like a promise or a warning. We ended up walking back from the cafe together, not planned, just the kind of coincidence you can't pretend isn't on purpose anymore. The street was almost empty, late afternoon light fading to gray. She carried her tote in one hand, her other buried in her coat pocket. I kept my hands out, not sure where to put them. "Long day?" I asked. She nodded, eyes on the pavement. "Meetings. People saying the same thing in 5 different ways. I smiled faintly. Sounds like my classes. Something flickered in her face, something between amusement and worry. You're still in school? Yeah. Last year. Then you should be doing things. Not sitting in cafes with someone who should know better. I stopped walking. You think I don't know that? She hesitated too, pulling her coat tighter. A car passed, throwing shadows across us. I don't know what you know, she said quietly. You're young. You think everything's possible. And you think nothing is. She looked up at me then, really looked. No smile to soften it this time. That's not fair. I shrugged, but it wasn't casual. Maybe not. We walked again, slower now. I could feel words pushing up in my chest, heavy, stubborn. Yesterday, I said, you didn't text back. Her steps faltered. I was busy. You always answer. Even just an emoji. But yesterday, I broke off, shaking my head. Forget it. I sound insane. No, she said quickly. You don't. She exhaled, white breath curling in the air. I didn't answer because I didn't want to. That hurt in a way I wasn't ready for. Okay, I said finally. Not because I didn't want to talk to you. Her voice softened. Because I did. We reached the little park near her street, empty except for a bench under a bare tree. She sat first, like her legs gave out. I sat beside her, too close, then too far, shifting without meaning to. I told myself I'd keep this simple, she said, staring at her hands. Coffee. Small talk. You'd get bored and stop showing up. I laughed once, no humor in it. Yeah? How's that working out? Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp and unguarded. Not great. Silence settled, thick and electric. A jogger passed, oblivious. I wanted to reach for her hand, but my fingers stayed pressed to my knees. You make me forget how old I am, she whispered finally. And that scares me. The words hung there, raw and unpolished. I swallowed hard, hearing my own heartbeat in my ears. You make me forget how young I am, I said, just as quietly. Her breath caught. A soft, uneven sound, almost a laugh, almost something else. She turned her face toward me, so close I could see the tiny raindroplets on her lashes from earlier. Neither of us moved. Not yet. Not quite. But the space between us felt thinner than air. She stopped coming. Not all at once. First it was just a late arrival, then a day skipped here and there. Then nothing for a week. I kept showing up anyway, ordering coffee I didn't want, staring at the door like an idiot. On the 5th morning, I saw her through the cafe window, not inside, but across the street, loading groceries into the back of her car. She looked different. Not tired, not rushed. Just elsewhere. I almost went to her. Almost. But she didn't look up, didn't notice me standing there like I'd been caught doing something I shouldn't. That night, I tried to text. Typed out "you okay?" Then deleted it. Typed "missed you today," then deleted that too. In the end, nothing felt right, so I set the phone face down and stared at the ceiling until my eyes hurt. The next time I saw her was by accident, 2 blocks from the cafe, near the dry cleaners. She was with a man. Mid-40s, tall, wearing a suit like it belonged on him. They weren't holding hands, but they didn't need to. The space between them told its own story. I told myself it didn't matter. Told myself I was just the kid at the coffee shop, a distraction at best. But watching her laugh, a real, easy laugh I'd never gotten, burned in a way I couldn't name. The next morning, I didn't go to the cafe. And the one after that. And the one after. I told myself I was too busy, that it didn't matter if I broke routine. But every time my phone buzzed, my chest jumped before I saw it wasn't her. On the 3rd day of skipping, I finally did text. Still alive? Sent it before I could think. No answer. Hours later, late evening, the reply came. We should stop this. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then I typed back, stop what? But didn't send it. My thumb hovered over the arrow, then I locked the phone and shoved it in my pocket like it might burn me if I held it any longer. I walked to the cafe the next morning out of habit, maybe out of spite. Her seat was empty. My coffee went cold untouched. I kept glancing at the door, knowing she wouldn't walk in. The barista finally asked, waiting for someone? I shook my head too fast. No. Just studying. When I left, I passed her street. I slowed at her house but didn't stop. Lights on inside. A shadow moved behind the curtains, maybe hers, maybe not. I stood there on the sidewalk with 1,000 words in my chest and not one of them willing to come out. Finally I turned, shoving my hands deep in my jacket, walking away like it didn't matter. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I didn't look. Not yet, it was late when I finally walked to her house. Not planned, not brave, just something that happened when you run out of reasons not to. Porch light on, faint yellow through the window blinds. I stood there too long before knocking. She opened the door halfway, cardigan over her shoulders, no makeup. The kind of unguarded that says either come in or go away, depending on how you read it. You shouldn't be here, she said, voice soft. I know. My throat felt tight. But I am. For a moment, neither of us moved. Rain dripped from the gutter, steady and slow. Finally she stepped back, just enough to let me in. Her kitchen smelled faintly of chamomile and something warm in the oven. No words while she poured tea into 2 mismatched mugs, sliding one toward me across the counter. My hands wrapped around it even though it was too hot to hold. I saw you with someone, I said finally. Her eyes flicked up, surprised, then wary. You shouldn't, I know, I cut in. It's none of my business. But it felt like it was. She set her mug down, fingers trembling just once before stilling. That was my ex-husband. We were signing papers. It's complicated. I exhaled, not sure if it was relief or something heavier. So you pulled away. I had to. She looked at me fully now, no shield in her gaze. This is already dangerous. People talk. And she shook her head. Too young to get stuck on someone like me. Stop deciding for me. My voice was low, but it didn't shake. You think I don't know the risk? You think I haven't gone over this 100 times in my head? She pressed her lips together, fighting something, anger, maybe fear. And what happens when it stops being exciting? When you realize I'm not a mystery, just a woman with bills and an aching back and a son your age? Then I guess I'll still be here, I said. Because I'm not after excitement. Her breath hitched, a sound barely there. The clock on the wall ticked louder than our words. She reached for her mug, then stopped halfway, hand hovering like she'd forgotten what she meant to do. I'm scared, she whispered finally. Me too. That was it. No grand speeches. Just the truth sitting heavy between us. I moved closer without thinking, not touching her yet, just close enough to feel the warmth from her sleeve. You don't have to decide right now, I said. Her hand brushed mine on the counter, not by accident this time. A small touch, steady and deliberate. She didn't pull away. Okay, she murmured, not an answer, not a promise. Just an okay that felt like breathing after holding it too long. We stood there in her quiet kitchen, steam curling from forgotten tea, both knowing something had shifted that wouldn't shift back. Mornings looked different now. Not every day, not like clockwork, but enough that the routine feels shared instead of lonely. Sometimes it's her making tea in that same chipped mug, sometimes it's me grabbing 2 coffees at 8:47 a.m. on the dot because the cafe girl still remembers my order, and now hers too. There was no big decision, no dramatic night where everything changed at once. Just small choices, repeated. A knock on her door on a Sunday morning. Her walking with me after class instead of pretending it was coincidence. The way she stopped pulling away first. Her son came home for a weekend in spring. I met him in passing, awkward smiles, polite nods. Later, she admitted she'd been terrified he'd noticed something, but all he cared about was finding his sneakers. We laughed about it over tea, steam curling between us like the first time in her kitchen. The bench near her street became ours. Sometimes we'd sit there without talking, just watching the light change through the bare branches. I'd hand her black coffee, she'd pass me tea, and neither of us mentioned how the other drink had quietly grown on us. Life isn't perfect. She still works too late, I still skip classes sometimes. People still talk, or maybe they don't, maybe it just feels like they might. But it doesn't matter as much now. The noise fades when you're sitting shoulder to shoulder on a quiet street, sharing the same silence. One evening, walking her home, she said, "Remember the first time I told you not to sit so far away?" "Yeah," I said. "You remember the first time you didn't?" She smiled at that, one of those tired, warm smiles that say everything without trying to. Now, when I leave her house in the morning, the world feels softer. Not new, just steadier. Like the rhythm we found isn't about excitement anymore, but about waking up knowing the day won't feel empty. And when she leans close in passing, brushing my sleeve like it's nothing, like she isn't saying everything at once, I remember that first text she ever sent, "Try the caramel latte." Trust me. I did. She was right. Too sweet at first. Better over time.